for DC. Our responsibility is to bring people from all over the world into Washington, DC for meetings, conventions, and of course for tourism. I've been with our organization for 14 years, so I have had the pleasure over the past 14 years to see this city do this incredible boom. And I have to say, Victor Hoskins, who was our speaker before, a lot of credit goes to him and his team when he was with Washington, D.C., because all those cranes that you've seen over the past probably 10 years is because of his efforts and a lot of things that he's done into this city. And you know, obviously DC being named one of America's coolest city by Forbes magazine last year was because of all the investment that the city has made in growth. And all of the speakers that we've had before really is talking about what the importance is of partnership between countries. And tourism is one of those things that brings it together. And I do believe that tourism really doesn't have it's just due only because people just think tourism is about hopping on a plane and going to some really cool places. And DC is a really cool place, the United States is a really cool place, China is a really cool place, but you really don't understand what the economic impact that it has on each one of our communities. And it's really important because it does touch the point, and we'll talk a little bit about that shortly. Why tourism is important, and let's talk about from a grand scale. I like to talk big picture stuff with the United States in general. And these are just some really fun facts about tourism to the United States itself. Tourism is the largest export in the United States, which brings over $220 billion to this country, which is pretty big. And international travel alone supports over 23 billion of that 220. So if you think about how much of the percentage that is, well over 10% of it comes from tourism and travel. And some really great points about China when you see this is, China is our number 2 country next to the UK at this point today. We all know that that's going to change over the course of the next 5 years, bringing in over $23 billion into spend. And then of course, 2.9% of all total international travelers that come to the United States come from China. So China is incredibly important for us when we're looking at it as a market and related to that. I'd like to look at what the goals is. Back in 2010, President Obama incorporated the Travel Promotion Act. And what this act was is that by 2020, we want to have over 100 million international travelers to come to the United States. And with that, that's a really high goal. We're a little bit over 75 million now. So we've got the pedal to the metal, is what we say in America, trying to get to that 100 million over the course of the next 3 years. But with that, that also comes with when you're thinking about bringing people overseas and what kind of economic impact and economic development that actually needs to happen in order to support this. That means airports, that means trains, that means roads. That also includes jobs that happen in America as well. So it's not just about bringing tourists here, but it's about the development that's actually going to happen underneath that to be able to support what this industry actually brings to the country itself. So last year, US and China got together. President Xi and President Obama were together almost a year ago and said what we want to do is we want to bring together and form a union that is going to talk about tourism specifically. And what we want to do is we want to share. We want to bring 1 million visitors over to China over the course of the next year, and then we want to bring 1 million Chinese visitors to America over the course of the year. And so with that, they developed a platform. And what this platform is they had 3 major efforts that they were focusing on. Education, because we all know, especially many of you that are in the room here, are part of that education program on education exchange. And then also with promoting, and it's all about promotions both ways. We're going to be promoting China for American visitors to travel over there, and then China has been heavily promoting the United States for travel over here over the course of the past year. And then of course sharing. And you know, the panelists that you had this morning, you know, we develop ideas. We have a lot of young creative minds in the room. We have a lot of experience over the course of the past years. But the best way in order to really grow development is by sharing best practices. And we all learn something from everybody because every culture is a little bit different on how they do that. And so that has been what the forum has been. And I'll talk to you on how DC is actually taking this program and is expanding it over the course of the past couple of years itself. So just to touch base a little bit closer, when we're talking about education, it's not just about education and promoting education for folks to come over here to go to school, but it really is to educate Americans about how to attract Chinese visitors to the United States, but also when they're here, how to adapt to culture so everybody feels as comfortable and as welcome as possible. In addition to that, promoting, this is the United States actually has an organization called Brand USA, which is the marketing organization for the United States itself, to really promote travel, international travelers to come over here. They have actually three offices over in China, to go over and really educate the tour operators and the trade in order to bring new business over here. And I'll talk to you about how we've done that and incorporated that into our platform as well for Washington, D.C. And then, of course, sharing with best practices. There isn't a month that goes by that I do not have a delegation coming over from some city in China into our office that Louis is doing a presentation to really talk about how we do tourism here in Washington, D.C., which every city is a little bit different, but that is the best way to exchange on how our city has incorporated tourism. When Victor was on board, they had, underneath the mayor's office, they had developed their city plan. And one of the pillars of their plan was about tourism, because we are the second largest industry in Washington, D.C. And so when you take that as far as what the economic impact is, it really does make an impact, so you do need to make an investment. And so we exchange ideas on how we have built that platform over the past 10 years to really accelerate our numbers, and we'll talk about that because we got some great numbers to talk about, which we just announced this past week. So visa policies, I know we're going to be talking about this when we talk about the panel, and I really want to bring this to the forefront because over the past 10 years, we, as far as the United States, have made great strides. When folks were coming over, 10 years ago, the only way that you could come over was on a business visa or you were coming here for education. And I think it was like 2007 or 8, kind of, when all of that changed to where anyone was able to come over here. But the challenge is when everybody was allowed to come over, the lines, the process, you're going to get your visas approved became very hard. And so the rating policies for approvals were down because a lot of people couldn't get there. And so over the course now, fast forward to 2016, which we're in today, there's over 5 cities in China that people can go do their interviews. It's a 3 to 5 day process, so it's really not that complicated. Last year they opened up the 10-year visa, so if you qualify for the 10-year visa, which I'm very proud owner of a 10-year visa to China now, since I go so many times, and then the approval rating is well into the mid to high 90s. So here we are doing great efforts. We still have big strides to go because there's so many people that want to come over here as well as Americans going over there, but we're getting there. And the process is moving as fast as it possibly can under the challenges that you have when you're opening up offices and what cities are able to do that. Will we ever see China as a visa waiver country? I'm not sure. That would be my greatest dream in order to be able to have that happen, but that's definitely always on our books and our wish list as we're talking to our government officials. So let's talk about China to the U.S. When you look at this number, and I just kind of like to just kind of show charts on the drastic growth, and I know when Victor was showing his chart, there's a year that all of a sudden that you start to see things starting to change. In the 90s, and then of course the in like 2007, 2008, that's when the change started, and this is exactly when the visa policy started to open, and this is why people were starting to come over here. New airlines were coming on board, and how important that is, and I'll talk to you a little bit about how Washington, D.C. Combated that as well. So back in 2012, we had 1.4 million Chinese visitors, and as of 2015, 2.5. So over 1 million visitors over the course of 3 years. That's huge. That's huge. So that's really big. That's a big deal to the United States. It's a lot of economic impact into our country. It's a lot of exchange into our country as well, and a lot of development that was able to happen because of tourism that was happening there. So let's talk a little bit about DC and what this is really meant to us, because I think we're a good city because we saw such a dramatic increase in Chinese visitors to the United States itself. So all you know, DC, probably if you've never, when you first were thinking about DC, you're probably thinking it's like, wow, this is as big as Shanghai and Beijing, right? No. So our city is only a population of 660,000 people that live here. So it's like a small community that's in China. But out of that, we are a big power. Obviously, being the U.S. capital, that helps us as well. But we know how to do tours, and we've got a lot of wonderful assets that are here, and we've taken advantage of that over the years. Tourism has taken off like wildfire with us from an international perspective as well. We see over 21 million visitors on an annual basis to Washington, D.C. This is the record. This is the highest that it's ever been in Washington, D.C. For international visitors, we have now broken our record. We had an increase of over 7.6 international visitors that came to Washington, D.C. in 2015. And why this is important, when you look at the second chart, numbers are great of people coming in, but we want to know how much money are they spending in our city, because this is what's driving the economy here in our city as well. So when you're looking at international and domestic, which is the U.S. travelers, even though international travel may be only 9 or 10% of the people that are coming here, but international does over 27% of the spend here. So that means they're staying longer in our cities, and they are spending a lot of money. And so this is why, this is the low-hanging fruit. This is why this is incredibly important to our city. And what I say as another American term is where the rubber really hits the road, is on that spend and what's driving in. So China visitors, we have been incredibly fortunate. When you look at 2011 was one of our biggest spikes. This is when we had well over a 90% increase over 2010 into Washington, D.C. And then of course your economy had a little bit of challenges in 12 and 13, but now it's back up. And so last week we just rolled out, actually this week, we just rolled out our new numbers. We are at the very highest. We had a 36% growth from China just in 1 year. And again, this goes back to that China-U.S. tourism promotion. It goes back to a lot of the efforts. When we started saw these numbers starting to grow from 13 to 14, that's when we knew we needed to hire Louis to come in, because I needed somebody from China that can really speak the language. I can get out and I can talk and I can show and I can be DC, but you really got to be able to invest into the culture and really invest into the people to understand how we can really influence people to come to Washington, D.C. as a vacation destination. Because many of them are coming over to New York, they'll hop on a bus, they'll come down here, they do a quick tour around that beautiful National Mall, they hop back on the bus again, and they go back up to New York. But we really want them to stay and to really enjoy all the assets that we have here in the city. I'm not going through this whole thing, but I did highlight that the Chinese visitor that comes to Washington, D.C. is $159 million into this city investment in a year. Again, you all are our #1 inbound market. You surpassed the UK 2 years ago, and it just, the range is now starting to get even more, so we're very excited about this. Victor had mentioned that a couple of years ago, we all had gone over to China to do a sales mission, and we sat down and we're like, what are some of the challenges that you have about bringing visitors over to Washington, D.C.? And it's because we had one air service, and that was United, that was doing direct service from Beijing to Washington, D.C. So that was in November. In February, I get a call from Victor Hoskins, and he's like, hey, Air China's going to start a flight in June. And I was like, you mean this June? Like in a couple of months? And he's like, absolutely. And I was like, oh, all right. So we hopped on a plane the next day, went out and had a meeting with Air China, and started this partnership along with the state of Virginia on really trying to not only bring a flight in, but you also have to have the marketing and the support in order to keep and maintain that flight. So it's always a difference when you've got a domestic flight and you've got a foreign carrier that's coming into the United States, because U.S. people will fly on an American airline, and then obviously the people who are coming in from China are definitely coming this way, but it's trying to get Americans on that Air China flight going back over to Beijing. And so we do know that there's enough people that are flying back and forth, but trying to choose what airline that they're going to do that for it was definitely a strategy that we had to put together. And so what we did is we put together a 3-year strategy. We invested well over $1.3 million into this investment along with the state of Virginia in order to support this air service. And it was a build-up over the past 3 years. We did sales missions. We were doing 2 sales missions a year. We hit well over 10 different cities in China, because part of the problem is perception. So when you go to somebody who's never been to America or been over here, you're like, all right, what city would you go to? And any of you, I can probably say New York City is your #1 city that you're going to say that you're going to hit. Washington, D.C., they knew was the U.S. Capitol. It was a place that you took a picture, and that was about it. And so now we wanted to educate people that it's not about driving around and really seeing these beautiful monuments, but it's really kind of, this is a really cool city now. And we all know that capital cities across the world, sometimes they're a little cool, and sometimes they're a little governmental. We're a cool city now, and we're happy and we're very proud of that. So we had to go out and, what I say, preach the gospel of Washington, D.C. And so we've invested a lot of time. Some of those things we partnered with the mayor's office, again, trying to highlight the economic development portion of that because tourism is so important for us, but also for our region as well. Washington, D.C., super cool city. Maryland and Virginia, super cool states. And so how do we marry the beaches and the mountains all together to really promote what this great package is that we have that you can all do within a couple of days as far as a trip. Familiarization tours. This is where we invite travel and tour companies over to Washington, D.C. and show them a good time. What we're doing is we're showing them the experience that they are going to sell to their customers. This is probably the most important thing that happens, and always on a familiarization tour, the first day I'll ask everybody, all right, tell me what you think about DC, and whatever you say, it will never hurt my feelings. It's government, it's boring, it's concrete, it's business, it's all about that. And then I'm like, all right, so the last day when we're having dinner, when you look over this and we're at Hard Rock Cafe, I'm like, what do y'all think about the city after you've seen it? And they're like, this is an amazing city, I can actually live here, and it's a place that I want to tell people about coming. And so that's all what it really is all about, is people experiencing and building these experiences so they can sell. Marketing and promotions. This is one of the greatest, coolest ads I think we've ever done in quite some time. We partnered with Air China on this, on really promoting the capital city to the capital city. And we have very great pride that Beijing is our sister city, and we have a lot of exchange that happens with Beijing often and year-round. And this is definitely one of the promotions that I really think kind of tells the story without ever having to say a word. We work with tour companies because, as we know, the only way that you're coming over here, besides just buying an aircraft to do travel, is most of the time, probably 85% of people are going through a tour operator. And so we work with all of them, C-Trip, U-Tour, Kaisa, CITS, EYTS, all of them, to really put these packages together and really get out there to the consumer to show them the experience that they're going to have when they come to DC. And then on the other side, we also do consumer direct. And so we've been in your metros, we've done magazine articles, we've done all kinds of things out in the consumer-facing market so we can educate them as well. So when they go to their tour operator, they're going to say, hey, I want to go here because of this. Social media, we are now entering into this world that is, even though we've got Facebook and Twitter here, and that's how we do marketing, Weibo and WeChat, a whole different story. And so we've developed our Weibo and WeChat accounts. In 2017, we are taking our WeChat relationship to the next level and really using this as one of our major promotional platforms. So in the future, it'll be great to have a conversation with WeChat on how they really are taking over the world when it comes to doing marketing and promotions, and it's not just a social platform. And so that's been pretty exciting for us as well. One of the platforms when we were talking about with the China Tourism Year is about education. This is our new education program called Welcome China. And this is a program that we're taking to our members in the city to say, you're a hotelier, this is what you need to do to welcome Chinese visitors. You're a tour company or you're a restaurant. These are the things that you can do to help attract Chinese visitors there and make their experience a more welcoming experience. So when they leave, they can say, I went to Washington and it was great. They had menus in Chinese. In our hotel, they had slippers and tea and all kinds of breakfast and all those kind of things that can attribute to that. And we'll be rolling out this program in September as we start to move forward. And just one last thing, when it comes to promotions and really highlighting the city, IPW is a show run by US Travel and Brand USA, which is the marketing organization, where we bring international tour companies from all over the world to the United States to do all their business. This is where they sign contracts, this is where they get inspired to really sell all the different kinds of cities that go on. and are promoting out. And we will be, for the very first time in Washington, D.C. in 48 years, holding this convention in this convention center in June of 2017, which we're very proud of. And we will have well over 200 Chinese tour operators and media that will be here as well. So we've got a lot of opportunity to utilize all the great personalities in this room to really get involved in this event, but also to welcome those operators when they're here in every aspect of their visit. They'll be here for the convention, but we have all kinds of fun things, tours, all kinds of activities that will be planned for them over the course of the 5 years that they'll be here. So with that, I know we've got our panel, so I'm very excited about that. And any questions people have, you can come see me after this event. So thank you all very much. I've been very honored about being here.